Okay. All right. So good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to Monday night on Mountain Stream. The topic tonight is going to be on clear comprehension. And I always find the discussion of clear comprehension interesting because it's a pivotal part of the four foundations of mindfulness, the sutta on the four establishments of mindfulness. And most of the time, you don't hear very much about clear comprehension. It's kind of folded in almost as if it's an assumption that if you're mindful, that you have clear comprehension. And one of the things I'd like to do tonight is distinguish the two, because that is not true, that simply being mindful uh, necessarily includes the element of clear comprehension. So we're going to go through what that means. I really like this topic because it's so practical. I think of it as the historical Buddha as a guide to implementing our intention into our practice and into our daily life. So it's in addition, excuse me, to being just like an interesting topic, it's a very useful topic. So we will sit for about a half hour and then take a short break and then come back and have a discussion. Okay, great. So just take a moment and allow both the body and the mind. It's a single system, but we talk about it as in this bifurcated way. So if it helps just to hold it as the body and the mind as a whole and allow it to begin settling, or if you have a practice where you settle your body and then settle your mind, if that's your practice, um, we can do that. And just start arriving into the present moment and leaving behind whatever energy, momentum, thoughts, concerns that you may have brought into the Dharma hall with you, or onto the cushion, or on the seat you're sitting in. And see if we can just start being here in this moment without worrying about the next moment or the last one. And in doing this, notice if you have a kind of a habitual routine that you automatically go into. That can be helpful, and it can also act as a barrier to just being with the condition of the body and the mind tonight. So see if, as a starting place, we can just open to the experience that's taking place and see where your attention is called. And if you can relax into that easy but awake type of process of just allowing the experience in your body and your mind to guide you rather than guiding your experience with your mind. So just experiment in the sitting with experiencing from the inside out rather than the outside in, the top, the mind down onto the experience that's taking place. And as the energy begins to settle and stabilize, seeing if we can bring our awareness right into the experience that's unfolding. And that means primarily the sensation of experience in the body and the mind. That's how we experience the world. We put a lot of labels on it, but we experience the world through our sense doors, including the mind as a sense door. And so just opening to the actual sensory somatic experience unfolding in the body as a whole, in the mind and body as a whole, or particular places, and then just relax into that experience. Uh, Experience it fully, explore it, see what insights you have about it. Uh, Not needing to think about it, figure it out, label it, do anything at all cognitively. So, to the degree that we can do this, we can just rest back into the experience that's unfolding rather than needing to do something, as long as we stay awake. So, if the mind is awake and alert and curious, and awareness is actually in the experience, the sensation of experience, it can be very restful. And it's the way that insight, spontaneous experiential insight arises. So in the last few minutes of this sitting, allow your awareness to begin just gently and slowly beginning to move out into the body and the mind as a whole. And feel the entire body and the mind situated in the room. And I invite you to set an intention for the way that we're going to participate tonight. And it feels like we're in a period of time right now where not just all over the world, but in this country, there's a lot of confusion and turmoil and anxiety. And this place where we're here tonight, this is a place of safety. And so setting an intention to really treat everyone on the screen tonight in the Dharma hall as a member of the community, and to listen with some real care and kindness and attention, and try to hold all of us hold each other in a space of care and compassion. Whenever you're ready, you can begin to open your eyes and come back into the room that you're in, and orient yourself in the room. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to do a short break. When you come back, I would encourage you, if you're comfortable doing it, having your screen on. When we're sitting, that's understandable. From the standpoint of presenting, when you're presenting to a blacked out screen, it's it actually makes it more difficult. You know, as a presenter, you're relying so heavily on the feedback from people there, the expressions on their faces, body movements, and all of that. So if you feel comfortable with that, when we come back, that would be great. So it is 6:32 or 6:30, depending on which clock you're looking at on my desk. um, so let's come back in 10 minutes, 6:40, and we'll start sharp at 6:40. Okay, thank you. Good evening again, everybody. I think we'll jump in and start. I'll go through a series of comments, and I think we'll have plenty of time to have a discussion. So tonight's topic is on what's called clear comprehension, which I kind of hold in my mind as the Buddha's guide to how we implement and integrate intention into our practice. And so, just as a starting place, intention is one of the most important elements in Buddhist practice. In terms of energy and momentum, it is what points the mind either towards clarity or confusion or satisfaction and peace or suffering. And from the standpoint of what is historically talked about as karma, or the implications of what we do and how we do it, intention is the whole ballgame. Intention is what drives karmic implications and karmic results. So the importance of having clarity about intention can't be stressed too heavily. So one way to think of clear comprehension is that it's a series of choices of how to implement and integrate intention into our life. And I think the way that it's most frequently presented is it's almost as something you do kind of on the fly based on the quality and depth of your training. So we're facing a situation and we have to make a choice. And from the standpoint of clear comprehension, there would be 4 questions. And the questions would be, what is my intention? How is my intention going to inform what I do right now? So in other words, what am I going to do? So what is my intention? What am I going to do? The third one is, how is my intention going to inform how I do it? And the fourth one is well, how do I sustain or maintain a Buddhist or Dharmic perspective, an intentional perspective on what I'm doing? So that's one way to think of clear comprehension. Another way, and I really like this way, is to consider it a framework, a more global framework that helps us mobilize the psychology and the teachings and the methods of the historical Buddha so that we can have more consistent and a more reliable approach to our practice, to our life, and to relationships. And my experience is both in my own life and in working with many, many people now over many years, that practicing at the community level can be haphazard, it can be undisciplined, and it can get directionless because we're not clear about our intention and we're not working with someone who's helping us stay clear. So these 4 questions, which we're going to go through in detail, help us shape our thinking. They help form the kinds of responses rather than reactivities that we have to situations. They shape our choices and they shape our decision making. And I think you'll see as we go through this, I was just kind of reflecting on this before we started tonight, that I think that this would be a really good topic for like a one-day workshop, because you're able to take an issue, whether it's a practice issue or something in your life, and then have a framework or a system of how to work through it. So we're going to look at that. So the first thing that I want to do is distinguish mindfulness from clear comprehension. Mindfulness in its simplest, I think, but good definition is moment to moment, non-judgmental awareness. We're having awareness and we're not adding anything to it. Clear comprehension, in contrast, is the discernment, the quality of discernment or distinguishing which way the mind and the heart is being pointed in response to the experience that's taking place. And I think that there's kind of a mistaken an implication or an assumption that if I'm mindful, if I have moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness, well, I must know which way my mind is being pointed, which is not necessarily the case, because it's helpful to remember that the historical Buddha talked about having wrong mindfulness, which seems like a contradiction in terms. But what he meant by that is that if mindfulness is not being driven by and held in the environment of all of the psychology and teachings and methods, it's just moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness. It's not Buddhist or Dharmic mindfulness. So the clear comprehension part is critical to life in a long-term practice. So I'm going to go through each one of these experiential inquiries of clear comprehension. And in each case, I'm going to use an illustration of how you might apply this if you were going to develop a part of your practice. And then The second illustration will be, well, how would I use this in terms of my relationships with other people? So the first area, the first inquiry of clear comprehension is, well, what is my intention? What is my purpose or motivation? Which is foundational because it guides everything that follows. And it would seem that that would be easy to know that. Um, and if you practice for any time at all, you know that it's frequently not easy because there are years of our developing habits and conditioning so that we're seeing in ways that aren't helpful or distorted. We're not awake. We're not mindful. We want to be caring, but we actually aren't because we have reactive patterns. So this idea of establishing some real clarity about your intention at the outset of what we're doing becomes uh, just such a valuable practice to start using. And so let's apply that to if I wanted to develop a particular part of my practice or I wanted to apply this to relationships. Excuse me. So with respect to my practice, an intention could be like a general statement of clear aspiration is that I want to deeply experientially understand the historical Buddha's psychology, which is a psychology of causation, not a psychology of self or personality. And I want to experience that at an experiential level to understand the concept, but I actually want to have the experience of that in my life. And the reason I want to do that is that if we don't do that, if we don't understand the underlying psychology, which ultimately is the theory of what's called dependent origination, it's these steps, this cycle, this path where we move through craving, clinging, attachment, and then personalization. If we don't understand that, then all we're working with is symptoms of our suffering, not the causes. We're trying to deal with anger or resentment or fear, but we're not getting to what's underlying and what the causes of it is. So this would be an aspiration of like deep choice to be able to see the process that causes me to suffer or causes me to move into satisfaction and peace and being able to understand it experientially so I can make a choice. The second illustration about relationships, it could be as direct as I want to learn how to cultivate relationships which are more consistent with the teachings of the historical Buddha and the psychology and the methods. So that would be number one, what is my intention? Second one is, well, what am I going to do? How is this intention going to inform what I'm going to do? And so the clarity of this focuses the actual application of our intention, our attention, and our effort, and any means that we choose to implement intention. And normally this is spoken as the field of activity. How am I going to do this and what field of activity? And here, because it's the intention is to experientially understand the psychology of causation. The field of activity, you could segregate it out. You could say, well, I'm going to focus to begin with just doing this in my meditation, or just in my daily life, or just in relationships. It really doesn't matter. The issue is the clarity of it, because if I have a clear intention and I have a clear idea of where I'm going to implement that intention, then I can do it. So with the understanding causation, the key part would be, first of all, developing a conceptual model, understanding the basic conceptual model of conditionality and causation. And with relationships, it would be narrowing the intention. So I would choose of all the different ways that we could work with relationship. The choice could be, for example, I'm going to develop my skill to listen deeply for the purpose of understanding the other person and finding commonalities between us. So my intention there is to have relationships which are more consistent with the psychology teachings and methods. And here it's being narrowed down that the field of activity, how it's going to be applied is to listening. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to listen for the express purpose of understanding and finding commonalities between myself and whoever I'm with. The third inquiry is, well, how am I going to do what I just decided that I am going to do? How is my intention going to inform how I do what I do? And so this calls for clarity in the specific means and practices and methods that are going to be used. So on the first one of understanding causation, we have the intention to understand causation. We are going to look at the conceptual model that the Buddha laid out of this. And then what I'm going to do, whether it's in meditation, daily life, or relationships, I'm actually going to test that model and find out what happens. So, I mean, is it true, for example, that in experience, when consciousness arises, that a feeling tone, a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral arises? And if I don't catch that, it just naturally progresses to craving, to desire or aversion, and that if the circumstances are right, that just naturally leads to clinging, attachment, which naturally leads to identification and the appearance of I, me, mine, and suffering. So is that simple and very powerful model of psychology that I can actually experience in my life? Well, is that true? So I have a conceptual model. I'm going to test it out. Is the model helpful? I mean, do I actually start to begin to see what it feels like to have desire or aversion or clinging or identification, so that when I feel that in my body, I have a choice to work with it. And because I have a model like this that creates clarity about my experience while it is taking place, does it give me the ability to have new choices and options that I don't have when I'm in reactivity? So the second illustration of how would intention inform how I'm going to implement this in relationships is that if my intention is to really understand and find commonalities while I'm listening, the basic model is going to be exploration and inquiry. So the tools would be, the means would be, I'm going to suspend judgment. I'm going to listen with undistracted attention. I'm actually going to listen to what the person says, how they say it, the tone of voice, the facial gestures. I'm looking for what's behind the words. I'm not listening with an idea in mind that I'm going to answer what they have to say, argue with them, any of those things. If I actually suspend judgment and really pay undistracted attention, that person will feel cared for at some level. And then I can listen very deeply. And out of that, the answer, the insight will naturally come as to, well, what should I do now? Should I ask some more questions? Should I make a suggestion? Should I engage in some kind of appropriate debate? And so to do those things, I need to be patient and generous and kind. I'm creating an environment that allows me to make the intention of listening to understand and find commonalities a real possibility, if not a probability. Okay, and then the final question, the experiential inquiry is, well, how do I maintain a Buddhist viewpoint or perspective? Keep the intention in the experience. And we all know how hard that is. You know, you can set an intention that I'm going to be kind or thoughtful or helpful going into a discussion or a meeting, and then halfway through the meeting, you know, you've completely blown that idea. You know, reactivity just takes over. So the key here is making a habit, and this is a skill that's developed, of sustaining a Buddhist frame or a practice frame or a Dharmic frame of reference of our intention, how we're going to do it, what we're going to do continuously to some degree in our life. So with respect to the idea of developing our understanding of the psychology of causation, part of the frame would be is holding the reality that all the time we are actually living in two different dimensions of reality. And the dimensions are just based on where our awareness is pointed. It's not like they're parallel universes. It's exactly the same thing with our awareness relating to it in two different ways. And we've got to hold both of these to maintain perspective. So one level of reality, conventional or personal, is dualistic in nature. I'm coming primarily from I, me, and mine. And when we confront suffering, it can just be heartbreaking. And we have to know how to work with that at that level. And there's a whole series of tools in practice to do that. But another dimension to give space to the personalization of events is, in fact, the psychology of this practice, and that is that events are not personal. They're based on conditions coming together and arising and then disappearing. They're temporary, and suffering appears and disappears, and it depends on conditions, the most important of which is our internal relationship with the conditions, which can change all of our suffering. So that would be an illustration of how we might hold a frame to help us maintain a Dharmic or Buddhist perspective regarding a practice development. On the relationship illustration, I think what's required is actually to relate to each other as human beings, and not as opponents or objects or some other way, but that we're both members of a human tribe, that we've all been born here. We all have hopes and disappointments. We all suffer. Almost everybody cares for their children and their partner. Each one of us is going to die, just like the planet's going to die. And we're all part of this extraordinary mystery. And somehow we're an expression of the same universal awareness and energy. And understanding that people think, feel, speak, and act from their suffering. I know I do that. I'm sure you do. But holding that in this larger thing, that we're in this mystery, dilemma, whatever you want to call it, of being human on planet Earth. And then that helps us not be quite so reactive, not get quite so angry. It's where compassion, deep care, kindness comes from. So those would be illustrations of the way we could work with the four questions. I want to close, yeah, so we can have plenty of time. I want to close with one final thing, which in a way may be the most important part of this discussion. And, I've stressed heavily that clear comprehension is about intention. And so the statement that I want to make right now is that intention is not enough. Okay, after giving a talk that's all about intention, intention is not enough. And what I mean by that, we've all heard this phrase that's been around probably at least for hundreds of years, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the way I interpret that in a dharmic context is that people thinking that they're well-intentioned is the way that they let themselves off the hook from being responsible and accountable for actually implementing and integrating their intention into their lives. And so it's very humbling to look at this closely, because my own experience is I view myself as a very well-intentioned person, and then I realize that the intention is this generalized notion or idea, and it's sincere and genuine, but it's not concrete. And so the issues that clear comprehension is raising, like, okay, well, what does that intention actually mean? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? How are you going to keep it going? Becomes the whole ball game. So for intention, actually, for most people, for intention to actually really take hold and express itself in our lives, we need to work with these 4 steps. And there are 3 simple practices that people find, interestingly, really hard to implement, because it requires that you develop a new habit and actually be looking at your life every day. And so the first one is actually intention setting in the morning before you start your day, or you go off to work, or you really start your day in earnest. So actually these issues that we've gone through, I mean, like, well, what is my intention today? Uh, how am what how am I going to implement that? What is that going to be? How do I sustain that? And reflect on that, and then move forward with the day. During the day, have intention reminders during the day, so that you wake up and just ask yourself the simple question, I set these intentions in the morning, and am I doing any of that? Or have I just gone unconscious? I mean, what is mindfulness worth if it's not implementing our intention? So it's one thing to be moment to moment, non-judgmentally aware. It's quite another thing that there's an intention behind that informing my life and my practice, my activities, and my relationships. So having a reminder set up. And then the last thing is, at the end of the day, reflecting on the same issues. In the morning, I established fairly clear intentions. Did I implement them? What happened? What can I learn from that about my mind, my reactivity, the way I hold other people's in relationship? What modifications might I make to be more skillful in setting intentions and implementing it during the day? So this is the way, in my opinion, that is a real jump starter for a significant long-term change in your practice, in the development of practice, in the implementation of practice, and the integration of practice into your daily life. So I'm gonna stop at this point, and then open it up for comments, thoughts, suggestions, disagreements, whatever seems appropriate. So,
Hi, thank you, Dennis. This is Jen from the meditation hall. And if people have comments or questions, please just raise a hand and I'll bring the microphone, because the microphone makes it possible for not only Dennis to hear us, but all the other friends on Zoom. And I think Robin will come on screen shortly, and we'll see the Zoom Sangha as well. And if you have a question or a comment as a Zoom Sangha member, please either raise your real hand or raise your virtual hand, and we'll try and trade off as needed. And we have a question from the hall, so I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone. Say your name first.
Great.
Hi, thanks, Dennis. I'm Merle. That was a lot, and I loved it because I kind of feel like I've been flailing, and so I'm not. It was a lot in the sense that I was coming in and out of grasping, just setting the intention and starting to understand that Buddhism does have structure, and that to accomplish some things that I'm internalizing or, going through internally, I could use a little bit more guidance. I don't know if there's like a book on it or something, but I understood some of it, of setting my intentions and inquiring and listening to people and realizing what am I doing here with the tools of Buddhism to to go farther into my path of awakening. So I think I'll stop there. Hopefully that made sense, but thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I think what this points out is there's a lot of teaching that we hear that is in the neighborhood of it's fundamentally non-directed awareness, open awareness and meditation, for example, and then talks about the value of various qualities of mind, compassion, kindness, equanimity, these different things, but without providing a lot of structure about, well, what do we do with that? And my experience is that the mind craves having a structure that it can use to developmentally learn something and to develop a skill. And if you look at the format of the historical Buddhist teaching, it's really reflected in that. There's the Eightfold Path, there's the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, there's the Seven Factors of Awakening. And it's not just because that all developed as an oral tradition. It was because I think he was very clear that setting up a structure that helps us work our way into understanding and developing a habit provides us with a sense of direction and stability. And then the whole point is that we get to the point where it's now second nature, where it starts to become second nature. And we don't need the structure anymore. So the idea of the structure isn't that, for in perpetuity, I'm going to be using the structure as a cognitive skill. That's where we start. But then what starts to happen is it just becomes second nature. I don't know of any particular book specifically on this topic or good resource, but if there's enough interest, and Robin and company can tell me afterwards if this would be helpful, but I would be glad to at least put together a couple page kind of summary or outline of the ideas tonight and what the structure looks like from my perspective, so that at least you had some place to start. And then so much of this is, if you understand that there's fundamentally four basic experiential questions, then what we're doing is making choices about where we want to put our effort in practice and in life, and then using all of these different skills that we have. So like on relationships, I just use listening as an illustration, but it could be all kinds of things. It could be, I'm going to be more open in relationships, or I'm going to be more caring. And then if that's it, well, then there's automatically a set of methods and underlying psychology that we can use to apply. So, so I hope that helped a little bit. Maybe
Yeah,
a little
it did help.
wasn't
And
just
then
more.
no, it helped. And then yeah, a little bit of maybe an outline that seems basic enough would be great if they could end up printing that out. And if not, it did seem really helpful and I can always like look online for something, but I need more of that. I can tell just because like I said, I've been flailing. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we all do. I mean, I know I've gone through periods where I'll work pretty intensively with teachers, and it's not just like going in and have a meeting and then coming out. It's all sunshine, and I suddenly understand everything. It's like, no, man, I'm confused, and I need some kind of structure to help me work through this. Um, and then you get over the hump, and then it feels totally different. So, okay. Other thoughts, comments?
This is Jen. I would like to just thank Merle for that question and also thank you, Dennis, for the clarification that the idea is we're doing, I mean, it sounds really intense what you're describing. It sounds kind of like a boot camp. But I like the idea that we would drop into an organized structure with this understanding that it would help us change our own conditioning and allow for some different habits to form, and then we could go forward a little less kind of aggressively or a little less didactically, but with some better awareness and some better kind of more informed trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all of us who sit here try to be careful not to overemphasize the obstacles that we're up against. But occasionally it's really helpful to remember that um, we're working with and sometimes against a whole lifetime of deeply developed habits and reactivities that aren't just like quote a reactive habit. Uh, it has an emotional component, a psychological component, a thought component, and a series of experiences or sensations in the body. And so, it's naive to think that, well, we're just going to meditate and in an undirected way and um, quickly we're going to dismantle all of that. That's just not what happens. It's incremental. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, but having a method that has some structure to it um, helps in like not getting lost uh, when we're really confused or depressed. We can go back to the fundamentals of a model as reminders. Um, and it provides kind of a sense of stability um, when we're feeling kind of lost. Um, so there's lots of things in the Buddha Dharma that do that, and this is one of them. So, okay, so I see Cedric has his hand up.
Yes, Dennis, thank you very much for tonight's talk.
Yeah, good
Uh,
evening.
all right, how you doing this evening? Um, I guess the question I have for you, you spoke about quite a bit about causation, and I would like to get a little bit of clarification on that because over the years I've developed a lot of habits, a lot of patterns I'm just not conscious of. And if I'm not paying attention, if I get up on the wrong side of the bed and and I don't pay attention to it, that to me, if I understood you correctly, that could be the causation of just setting the tone for the rest of my day.
The rest of the day.
I just want to clarify, would that be causation? And if it is, how can I better recognize that causation to have a much better day.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that sounds awfully familiar, Cedric. uh, so, one of the, so I'm going to try to answer that in part by relating it to the talk tonight. So I think this practice of having a morning reflection is quite helpful, because my experience is that, I'll be working on something. I'm trying to develop a particular quality in my practice or in relationship, and I'll sit down. It doesn't have to be a long time. It can be 4 or 5 minutes when your mind's in a calm place. And I'll sit down to do that, and I'll just see that my mind is like not hearing it. It's like it is not in a good place. And so the discord between what I know I'm working on and who I am in that moment, it just boom. It's you can't not see it. And so then that for me, makes me back up and pause and then go in and really look at, well, like, what's going on. Is it anger? Is it like I've just had a terrible night's sleep and I'm having trouble organizing my mind? Is it that comparatively simple, or is there something that I didn't process before I went to bed the night before, and I'm really agitated or upset about something or someone, and I need to work with that, you know, or maybe it's I see that actually I'm depressed, and because the intention setting thing shined a light on that, I realized, well, gee, maybe I've been kind of depressed for a couple of days and really not realizing it. So now I know that I need to work with that. So that whole morning thing and combining this with it can be really helpful. And then what I find so helpful about, the Buddhist psychology is that wherever you are, you've got some place to start, because um, if you can feel that you're really stuck and holding on to something, that's clinging. It's attachment. And okay, so that's what I have to work on. Or maybe your mind's just completely aroused. It's not attached. It's around. Well, that's desire and aversion. So that's a different thing to work on. So then we just kind of systematically work through what it is, but the model of causation is so helpful because you can just see those so clearly in your body and your mind. So does that help a little bit?
Yes, it does, because going back and doing some reflection would help me to make it through that conditioning because of the causation. So yes, that's very helpful. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
yeah. Thank you, Cedric. Okay. So I think, and so in closing my part of this tonight, I'd like to thank all of you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. May the purity of our intention in meeting together and helping each other in some way really inform the level of suffering that's going on in the world right now. And can we all set an intention that is a starting place to try to change the world, that will just be a little bit kinder and a little more caring and compassionate to those we love and the people around us. And I think if we do that, it's a good start to change the world to the degree that each of us can do that. Okay, so thank you very much.